Okay, so welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about the logging. Okay, so whenever we have to start the applications, we need to configure a logging mechanism to our applications. So if you are creating the Spring Boot application, then one thing we need to think about that if you are adding a Spring Boot starter web, along with that there is a dependency is coming like Spring Boot starter logging. Okay, in that dependency we have a configured or implicit logging framework is a logback. If you are implicitly not if you are not doing anything, then by default you can get a leverage of that logging framework, which is a logback. Okay, but suppose that I don't want that logback as my logging framework. I want a log4j as my logging framework. I need to configure my log4j related configuration for my logging. Okay, so in that case what we need to do, because I have done a couple of investigation on that, what are the problems that we are facing and how we can overcome from that kind of problems. Okay, so first we what we need to do, we have to just exclude the Spring Boot starter logging from our Spring Boot starter web dependency. Okay, once you have excluded, again you have to add a new dependency, which is a Spring Boot starter log4j. Okay, so there are two versions. We can say that we have a log4j and we have a log4j2 also. Spring Boot starter log4j, Spring Boot starter log4j2 also. Let us take if you are going with the log4j, Spring Boot starter log4j. Okay, so if you have added that dependency, after that by default the Spring Boot is looking for a log4j dot properties or log4j dot xml, log4j dot json or log4j dot xml file into your class path. What do you mean by class path? Class path is nothing but src slash main slash resource. You have to put the log4j dot properties files there, and inside that you have to configure your logging mechanism, whatever you want to configure. Like you have to configure the appenders, layouts, and all those kind of things. Okay, now the case is that we have to always think about that. Okay, this is completed. Now let's go ahead and think about our log4j dot property file, what we are going to put there. Okay, always the best practice is that we have to configure a two appender, which is one is a console appender and another one is a daily rolling file appender. Okay, and one more thing is that if you add a log4j, Spring Boot starter log4j, then you can configure the daily rolling file appender. But if you configured or if you added the Spring Boot starter log4j2 dependency, then you are not getting daily rolling file appender facility. That is the important kind of thing that we have to adhere whenever you are doing the logging configuration. Okay, this is the important thing that we have to always remember. Suppose that you have, now we have added the log4j. Now in the log4j.properties files you have to configure your console appender as well as the daily rolling file appender. Okay, we have configured that always. And the one more important thing is that whenever you are configuring, always think about that in the log4j, in the cases of the log4j, the properties are starting with the log4j, like log4j.appender, log4j.logger kind of things. And when you are thinking about the when you are working with the log4j2, then there is directly starting the properties like appenders dot kind of things like logger dot appender. They are not starting with the log4j. This is very important, because whenever you are stuck somewhere and if you want some property from the internet, then always search like that log4j dot property sample example. From that you can easily get the properties examples. If you are not remembering all those kind of things, always go to the internet and search about that log4j properties example. Suppose you are not working with the log4j, if you are working with the log4j2, then always search like log4j2 dot properties example. So you will get the example, you will get the sample properties, that how they are configuring according by seeing those properties. Then think about that and take a decision about your appenders, and if you have a console appender or if you have a rolling file appender. As well as we know that in log4j2 we don't have a daily rolling file appender. That's why it is important that there we will get only rolling file appender and the file appender. Okay, This is the important kind of thing that I have investigated. Another thing is that if you want to set a log level for a root, then you can set with the log4j by setting a property called log4j dot root logger kind of things. Okay, and if you want to set a log level for a specific package or for a specific category, then you have to set by using log4j dot logger dot complete fully qualified package name is equal to your log level. Yeah, this is important. Now all this kind of, let me just think about it, if anything is remaining or not. No, I think I have covered lots of the cases, I have covered all the loopholes, and yeah, we have to think all this kind of things. And yeah, that's it for today. If you have any, just start the coding of the logging configuration, and if you have any question, just think of, just clear these points that we have a logback by default. If you don't want logback, go ahead with the log4j and search the properties of the log4j. And if you are working with the log4j2, then search the properties of the log4j2, because both these cases of both these dependencies are having a different property convention that they are following. Yeah, that's it for the log4j and the logging configuration. It is important to adhere all this kind of convention. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.